We are live.
Good.
Doesn't have her screen up, that's yours.
Okay. So could we see like her name on here? Yeah. We know. Okay, this is Senate Appropriations. There is Commissioner Knight. Thank you for joining us. You can hear us okay?
I can hear you. Sorry, I didn't realize I was off video. Good to see you all.
Yeah, likewise. So this is the new Appropriations Committee, and we're going through the governor's recommend on the budget adjustment. And we understand you have an adjustment that you would like to make.
Yes, I'm happy to discuss this with you. For the record, my name is Wendy Knight. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. So on the Liquor Control Fund, essentially what we're seeing is a number of factors. Most recently are the market adjustments. So what I've been talking about for a year is that over a year probably, is that alcohol consumption is down. And so the revenue from the sale of alcohol is down, and thus the revenue to the general fund is down. The sale of alcohol, again, is down due to the consumption, right? So people are consuming less alcohol. And there's a number of it's occurring nationally, and there's a number of reasons for that. I think people are becoming much more health conscious. People are enjoying more non-alcoholic and low alcoholic products. The quality of the non-alcoholic beverages has improved dramatically over the last couple of years. In states that have legalized cannabis, we see that alcohol consumption is down. Inflation accounts for some of this as well. We know that prices for everything have increased, so people have less discretionary income. And then most specific to Vermont was the floods of 2023. We had at one time 10 stores that were closed. If you remember, that was kind of widespread impact on the state. And so we had a decline in revenues there for that particular summer. Some of those stores stayed closed for a period of months. The other contributing factor is that evidently there's been an ongoing deficit with this liquor control fund. And this goes back to 2017, when there was first a net position that was a positive, and then it started, for a couple of reasons, showing up as a negative. And part of that was the requirements for reporting on long-term liability. Part of that was during COVID. I call it the COVID years. We had a lot more alcohol consumption as bars and restaurants were closed and people were consuming alcohol at home. And so we saw sales that had increased quite a bit. But what happened during those COVID years, I call them, and that's like, let's see, it would be FY 20, 21, and 22. We started to see that the direct application, and that's the transfer that occurs at the beginning of the fiscal, from the Liquor Control Fund to the general fund, exceeded what we were really showing as profit. So that's the years the direct app started to be 21 million, 22 million and change, 22 million, almost 23 million each year. Well, what that did is it contributed to the deficit, right? So what this year we're doing, and I think that Commissioner Gresham had explained the fiscal policy, is that there was some additional revenue surplus, and so it was the recommendation of Finance and Management that they zero out some of these deficit funds. So that's why you're seeing, instead of a $21 million, you're seeing I don't have the exact figure, but the $9 million. So that's to zero out the deficit. And just to give you some confidence in my fiscal management, right? So some of this is things that I inherited. If you look at the budget years that me and my team were responsible for, you started to see the operating expenses decline, right? So if we're seeing revenues start to decline, you also have to, reduce your operating expenses. So for the periods, I guess, an average of from 18 to 22, which were budgets I was not responsible for, the average increase in operating expenses was 5.8%. And if you look at the FY23 and FY24, the actual budgets that I was responsible for, you see a 1.7% increase in operating expenses and then a 0.9% increase in operating expenses. So for an average of 1.3%. So the plan obviously is to not operate in a deficit. So moving forward, we would take the revenues less the operating expenses, less the long-term liability, and that would give you a true net profit. And that's what we would be recommending that be transferred from the department to the general fund.
And Commissioner, there was a transfer in 2005 for the 2025 budget year. Do you remember what that was? I can look it up.
You mean 2024? Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah. You're asking the start of FY25, which would have been in July?
Yeah. Which I assume was part of the budget. We would have.
Yeah. I don't have that. I don't know why I don't have this on this sheet. The last one I have is a direct application, which would have been FY24, and that was 21.2 million.
Do you know if there was one?
So the Act 113 had 21.1 million.
Still another 21. Okay. So it would have been better just to put in over 10 million, but we put in 21 million. This budget adjustment takes 11 million back, basically. Okay.
To zero, yes, to zero out the deficit.
Yeah. And I guess we'll deal with next year. What do we deal with next year's budget? And just, I assume maybe this when you do your budget for next fiscal year, we'd be interested in seeing that trend and how revenues in the fund have decreased over years.
Yes, and I have that for the FY26 projected. So we've been developing, the FY26 budget. And so we are projecting basically sales that's being flat. So our revenue projections for FY26 are 101 million and change, which is where we ended up with our estimate for FY25 as well. So where we ending this fiscal is where we're kind of projecting we're going to end for next fiscal. And then the estimated for the direct app transfer to the general fund would be 14.8 million.
Okay.
Right. So, and I think part of that is, again, the COVID years where we're starting to see the market coming out of COVID, we're starting to see a market adjustment, right? Where sort of the increase is typically before COVID, we would see a 2 or 3% increase in sales year over year. And that's where we ended up taking a little more than really the net profit was there because we were using those estimates. And so what we are looking at now is not only a post-COVID market adjustment, but we're really looking at what's happening since last July nationally, which is alcohol sales are going down because alcohol consumption is going down. And I don't anticipate that swinging the opposite way. I expect that trend to continue. And at some point, it will be 1% decline or maybe 2% decline. At some point, it may level out.
Yeah, which has its savings probably in our healthcare costs somewhere, I would assume. And then just remind me, it doesn't matter where Vermonters or visitors are consuming alcohol at all. The money, the tax gets to the fund, whether it's through a state liquor store or people buying liquor at a restaurant.
Correct. So the sale, because we're a control state, the sale of alcohol must take place at an 802 Spirits store. And so what you're seeing in terms of these tax revenues are the revenues that are coming directly from the department for the sale of alcohol. And that's the excise tax, and that's the revenue that comes directly at the registers at an 802 Spirits store. The additional tax would to the state comes from the rooms and meals tax. So when alcohol is sold at on-premise on-premise establishment, those are your bars and your restaurants and your ski resorts, that's taxed additionally in the rooms and meals tax.
So they don't, when the restaurant buys their liquor, do they pay the excise tax from the liquor store?
Yes.
So you kind of get taxed twice in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, so the excise tax is taken at the supplier. It's not at the bars and restaurants. So what happens with the bars and restaurants that are purchasing alcohol from 802 Spirit stores, they're not paying tax on that at the register. What they're paying is the same amount as a walk-in customer. So you are a walk-in customer, you pay for your spirits, you are taxed on that. The bars and the restaurants aren't.
Right. But it's through the supplier that tax is collected.
Correct. And the other alcohol tax that the state derives is from the gallonage tax on cider, beer, and wine. And that again is paid by the manufacturers. So with the spirits manufacturers, that comes through us through the 5% excise tax. And for the manufacturers of malt and wine and cider and low ABV RTDs, that comes directly to the tax department through the gallonage tax.
By gallon produced in the state.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, before we move to gambling, is there any questions about this deficit capitalization of the government?
Okay, and then on sports wagering, is that what you would like me to talk about next, the online sports wagering? So initially we had projected for FY25 our revenue of $7 million, and how we derived at that is the first 6 months of FY24, that's when we launched online sports wagering. That's from January to June of 24, we realized 3.5 million in revenue. So as a brand new program, we know it's cyclical. We were sort of thinking, okay, 6 months times 2 equals $7 million. Pretty fair, reasonable estimate. When we started looking at the monthly revenue share beginning in July, the beginning of the fiscal, we noticed that our revenue share was not growing at what we were thinking would be kind of a rate to get us at 7 million. Now we know that it's cyclical, so there's a lot more revenue at the beginning of the year because it was Super Bowl playoffs we had just launched, and NFL season drives a lot of the revenue. So we sort of expected to see kind of light revenue share in the summer months, right, when there's not much wagering that goes on, but picking back up during the regular NFL season. But what we started to notice is that the percentage of winning payouts was increasing relative to the handle, right? So the handle is the total amount that's wagered, less the winning payout. So people place a bet and they win the bet and they get payout. That gets deducted from the gross receipts, so you end up with an adjusted gross wagering revenue. That's where we apply the share. So the adjusted gross wagering revenue, we apply our share, and it's 33% from one operator, 31 from another, 31 from another. So you end up with somewhere around 32% composite, depending on the composition of the wagering that month. And then we were seeing that we were actually earning less revenue, and that's because the winning payouts were increasing. And so I was a little concerned that when we were looking at it month to month, that we might not make that $7 million projected revenue. So I felt it was better to revise it now, right? And just say, okay, let's be a little more conservative and say that we're going to bring in 6.1 million for FY25, right? And if we end up exceeding that, great. If not, at least we're not counting on that revenue.
Senator Bruce.
Can I ask, why were the payouts increasing? What's your sense of?
Yeah, so what we heard from the operators is that the bettors were placing the safer bets that were winning. So, I don't know whether that means they're getting more savvy or they're just placing more conservative bets, but they're placing the bets that are winning. So again, I've said this before, like great for the players.
I want to do that.
Who is that?
Great for the players. That means, like, so you think about it, like, okay, so if they're Vermonters, which 60% or 70% are, like, depending on how much they've won, they will have to pay income tax. Like, if it's discretionary kind of income, maybe we assume they're gonna circulate it into the economy. So maybe they go out to dinner, maybe they buy a piece of furniture. I don't know, but they're winning more.
And do
Which
we have
state
data
is
from other,
earning less.
Commissioner, do you have data from other states? It seems to me, I'm just suspicious, but that something else is going on. But so do we have data from other states and other states that have started it, like payouts are greater at the beginning to kind of get people to play more or something like that? Or is it, because the news article is like, well, Vermonters are just better at sports gambling, which I'd like to think is true because we're just smarter, but I don't know if that really is the case, like, or is there something else happening? Could we compare ourselves to other states, especially new states that have brought it on?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things I will say about that is we don't even have a first full year of operation yet. So some of this is new. Like all of it is new, right? It's data that we're looking at, we're trying to understand. We won't have comparative data until starting this month. We'll be able to look at season over season and really sort of understand the data. So what we're hearing from the operators is it's not. I guess I would say that they're seeing this consistently, right? This isn't an aberration that's happening in Vermont. It's
Okay.
happening across all the operators. We have 3 of them in the state. It's not just one. It just has to do, and I'm not a wagerer, so I might not get the terms correct. It has to do with the bets that they're playing. And maybe it means I don't know that it means they're being more savvy at betting. Maybe they're just placing the safe bets that happen to be winning. But
It might be small payouts, but over a large number of people playing, it's a significant enough number to affect the revenue.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that initially in the first 6 months, the percentage of the handle that went towards the winning payouts was 88%. So over that first 6-month period, we saw 88% of the gross receipts went to the players in the form of winning payouts. Whereas the second 6 months, we've seen that increase to almost 90%. So it's something that we're looking, so you're looking at going from 88% to 89%, that 1 or 2% difference means that we're earning less money.
So in the handle is all the bets made.
Correct. It's the gross receipts, the total dollar value of the betting.
Right. Yeah, it just seemed like the betting world can survive paying 90% out.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
So so put this in context. So $140 million was wagered.
Yeah.
So they're paying 88% or 89%, right? I don't have the math in front of me, but what's the adjusted gross revenue is what the operators in the state is sharing in. So that is, again, it's the composite, let's say 32%. We get 32% and they get the rest. There's nothing nefarious going on here. It's just that people are winning bets.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to figure out, yeah.
I'm just amazed that it's 90% are winning. Like,
That's not
it's not what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a
Yeah,
payout.
basically almost 90%. It's not 90% of people. It's just that the amount of the total amount of the winning payouts that gets subtracted from the gross receipts is about 89%.
Of the total handle. So it
Yeah.
could be, it could just be a few very large bets, or it could be
Correct.
everybody on a little bit. But
Correct.
it's still, yeah, like, it does seem like that's them paying out. I mean, I guess it's not the full 80% because there's our shares.
Yeah, and I think that I think people get confused between sports betting and casinos and lottery, where the
Right.
percentages, in terms of forms of gambling, I think that the online sports wagering has a higher percentage, right, of the handle going to winning payouts. You don't see that in, a casino or Vermont lottery, for example.
Okay.
We'll have
Yeah,
a lot more to share once we start getting into the comparison of, once we see a full fiscal year, and then we are able to start comparing seasons. I'm excited and curious to see what this January playoff Super Bowl season will bring.
Okay, Senator Norris has a question.
Yes, Commissioner, maybe I was confused. Is it my understanding that you said that I, as a restaurant, purchase alcohol from the wholesaler, I get charged that tax from the wholesaler as a restaurant?
No, that's not correct.
Wholesaler
So let
pays
me clarify. If you're
Okay,
a bar or restaurant and
Yeah.
you're purchasing alcohol from the department, I'm talking about distilled spirits. If you're a bar or restaurant, you must purchase spirits through an 802 spirit store because we're a control state. So they're paying the retail price. We don't offer wholesale pricing for bars and restaurants. There are things we're doing to try to help them, but they basically go into an 802 spirit store, just like you would as a customer, and they purchase their alcohol for the bar and the restaurant, right? There's no tax on that. They are not paying income tax on that or sales and use tax like we would as a customer. If I go in to buy a bottle of bourbon, I'm charged a sales tax. A bar or restaurant is not charged a sales tax. The way they purchase beer or wine or cider has nothing to do with the department. They buy it from a wholesaler. Okay, they're not paying tax on it. The wholesaler, the manufacturer is paying the tax on the the gallonage. Okay, so the beer, wine, and cider operates out of the department, and it's a gallonage tax.
There's the sales tax and an excise tax of the
Yeah, so the excise tax is what the spirits manufacturers pay, and that goes through the department. That's spirits, okay? And then those are the suppliers. Those are the people that are manufacturing that product. The beer, the wine, and the cider, that is called a gallonage tax, and they pay that directly to the tax department.
But when I'm a customer and I go and bought that bottle of bourbon, I pay sales tax and an excise tax.
No, you
right?
don't pay an excise tax.
Okay,
Consumers don't pay
just
excise tax.
just the sales
It
tax.
got paid in
Correct.
an early point. of this
Wholesale
cycle.
is excise.
And so the excise is just what the wholesale or the charge that when the restaurant buys it, they pay the excise but don't pay the
No.
sale.
No, the bars and the restaurants
Manufacturer.
do not pay
Okay.
excise tax. The
The
Pay
bar-
sales tax.
they're
Yeah.
not paying sales tax. They're
Okay.
charging
That's the
sales
part I
tax
was-
when it's sold at a bar and a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, the customer.
They're charging rooms and meals tax at the bar and restaurant, aren't they?
Yes,
Which is
the
higher
rooms and
than
meals
sales
tax
tax.
gets charged at the bar or restaurant. There's a applied to the bill is a rooms and the meals tax, and that goes directly to the tax department.
Yeah.
So you know what I've done before?
Tax.
Pardon me?
Somebody double dipping here.
So what I can offer to do is send you a little sheet that explains this, because
Yeah,
it will help you understand. I've had to do this before, and it will help you understand all of the tax that's collected for alcohol sales and what of that comes through the department and what goes directly to the tax department.
Great, that would be helpful. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that explains your two adjustments from your budget and VA. Is there anything else that you want to tell us?
No, just that you can be assured that we're not going to operate in a deficit.
That's great. That's good news. Thank you for sound financial management.
Absolutely. I have a great financial director as well. Keeps us on track.
Okay, the last chance, well, not the last chance to ask the commissioner a question about liquor taxes, but we'll have you back when we go
I
over
will.
the.
I'll send you
FY26.
that follow-up sheet that explains the taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
So wait a minute, I buy a handle of vodka.
You're so large.